Hi guys, this is Crystal Roberts, and today I'm going to show you some things about Scrivener. When you open up the Scrivener window, you're going to have a choice of project templates. There are some built-in ones that come with Scrivener for fiction. Those two are custom. I'll get back to those later. Nonfiction, script writing, and miscellaneous, even a recipe collection. But let's go back to fiction. I'm going to create my novel with a novel template. Hit Create, give it a name, Crystal Novel, and put it in my Documents folder, and hit Create. Now this is the window that will come up. Let me make it bigger. And let me zoom in a little bit because my eyesight isn't what it used to be. Okay, good. Now, this section on the left-hand side is called the binder. To hide it, you click on the little blue binder button. And to bring it back, you click on it again. This is where all your folders will live. On the right-hand side is the inspector. You click on the little I button to hide it, and click on it again to bring it back. The middle section is your composition section, and right now it's on novel format, an explanation of the template. Now, manuscript is where all of your folders and where your book will live. There's one chapter folder already and one scene document. Eventually you'll make several chapter folders, but you don't have to do that now to get started. So let's work with this current folder we have and add some more scenes. To do that, you go to the bottom left, hit the plus button, and you'll create a new scene document. And then you can give it whatever name you want. Let's call it Scene 2. You can also go to the chapter folder, right-click, Add, and click on New Text, and you get a new document that way. And let's call it Scene 3. And let's call this first scene Scene 1. Great, okay. Now let's start writing. John is missing. Now you'll notice that for each scene, the inspector, there is a comparable synopsis and notes section. So for our Scene 1, let's give it a heading for our synopsis. John is missing. And then we can put a synopsis about the scene. The novel opens with John missing for 5 days. Now let's go to Scene 2, and we can give that a heading as well. Mary is looking for John. That's our text for Scene 2. And then we can go over to the inspector and give it a heading. Mary looks for John. And then the synopsis, Mary has been looking for John since he didn't show up for dinner. And now let's say Scene 3. Our text will be Detective, hold on. Detective Jones gets a report that John is missing. And then in the synopsis, we can change the heading to Detective Jones gets missing report. And then the synopsis can be the police get a report that John is missing. And you'll notice every time you change the heading in the inspector, it changes it for your document. Now let's say we want to add a note. We can add check police procedure for this scene. Now if we go to our binder, we can look at the 3 documents, the 3 scenes, and this is one of the beauties of Scrivener. If you want, let's say we want to start the book where Detective Jones gets a missing report about John. So if you drag and drop that scene, now that's where your book will start. Let's say we want the second scene to be Mary is looking for John. We drag and drop that under our first scene. And then John is missing. Let's say we don't even need that scene anymore. We can right click and send it to the trash. And it will stay in the trash until you empty it out. So let's say you have two different scenes. You can also highlight the chapter folder, and there's something in Scrivener called a corkboard. So let's say you want the book to start where Mary is looking for John. All you have to do is move that in front, and it moves over here as well. So now the book starts, Mary looks for John, and then the police get a missing report that John is missing. You can also change the layout to something called scrivenings, where you can see everything that's written one page after the other, everything that you've written in all of these documents, or you can see the documents individually. Then there's another view that you can look at called the outline view. So in outline view, there are a whole bunch of headings you can look at about your scenes. You can look at creation date, modification date, word count, target date, your progress for your particular scene. You can also keep track of labels for your scene. And labels you can adapt to anything you want. So let's say Mary's scene is from Mary's point of view. Mary is looking for John. And if we want to add a label to that scene, we right click, go to label, hit edit, and then we can add a new label with the plus sign called Mary POV. We can give it its own color by double clicking on the color. Let's say we want it blue. Hit OK, and now assign that label to Mary's scene. So we can right click, go to label, and Mary POV is now the label for that scene. And you see it on the bottom right hand corner there too. Now let's say we want to give a label to Detective Jones's scene. So if we right click on the bottom right, edit again, add the plus sign, Detective Jones POV, give it a color, double click on the color, let's say we want to make it green, click OK, and then assign that label to Detective Jones's scene. We can click there, and then go back to outline, and you'll see that the labels for Mary's POV and Detective Jones's POV are attached to those scenes. So let's say you want to keep track of the points of view of your characters. You can do that if you assign labels of POV to each of your scenes in your book. So labels are really important, and you can make labels whatever you want them to be. So let's say you go to the corkboard view. You'll notice that you have the same blue color that shows it's Mary's point of view on the index card. And then you have the green color here that shows it's Detective Jones's point of view on his index card for that scene. You can have a status for your scenes as well. So you can make the status, say, from Mary Looks for John, that scene, on the bottom right hand corner. You change the status to say in progress. And then let's say for Detective Jones's scene, you change the status to first draft. Then if you go back to Corkboard view and you go to View, Corkboard Options, Show Status Stamps, you'll see those status stamps on your index cards. So it's up to you how you customize what you do in Scrivener. It's all based on how you like to work. There is a high learning curve for some of its features, but you don't have to know all of its features to use it. Okay, so let's say you're the type of writer that likes to storyboard before you start writing. Well, you can do that in Scrivener's Corkboard view. So let's say you go to the bottom of the corkboard, the plus sign, and if you hit plus, you can add an index card for your next scene. You can give it a heading. John is found at bottom of cliff. Now you can add another index card by hitting the plus button once again. Mary searches for John's killer. Let's add one more. Detective Jones searches for John. Now you'll notice as you add index cards to the Corkboard view, you're also adding documents in your chapter. So if you look down in the chapter folder, you now have those new documents represented by the index cards. The icons for those documents are blank, and that means there's nothing written in the documents. Now if you go to the bottom right-hand side of the screen, you can adjust the Corkboard options. So you click on that, and you can adjust the card size, the spacing, and then if you click on this button, you can make the cards more freeform. So you can move them around in a freeform kind of way, and that allows you a little more flexibility as well. Or you can go back to the normal Corkboard view, move them around the way you want, and they snap into place. And as you move them, you'll see that they also move in the chapter folder. Now for those of you who already use Scrivener, you might be saying, oh wait a minute, Crystal, I don't have those colors. How do you get those cool colors? Well, the reason I have all those colors is because I'm using a couple of themes that I found online for Scrivener that were free, and which I'll leave the links for in the posts that I give you this week. And the way you can change themes in Scrivener is you go to Scrivener, Theme, and there's the default theme that comes with Scrivener, which is like this. Then there are themes like Solarized Dark, Solarized Light, and then these themes that I downloaded from the internet, the Blush Scrivener theme, which is this one, the Spring theme, which is kind of nice, and the Slate theme. Now, if you have the time and the energy, and this is a kind of fun thing you'd like to do, you can create your own themes with your own colors. The way you do that is you would go to Scrivener, Preferences, and Appearance. And in Appearance is where you change all of the options and colors for a whole range of features in Scrivener. So the background for the synopsis, the backgrounds for the notes, the backgrounds for the binder, what the Corkboard looks like. But unless you really love digging into this kind of stuff, don't get overwhelmed because it can take some time. But if, for example, you want to do that, you can make all of the changes in here. And then once you're in Appearance, you go to Manage, and then you can save the theme that you've created. So let's say I want my index cards a different color. I can go here and make my index card say yellow. And then if I do that, I can go to the Manage button, Save Theme, give the theme a name, and save it. And once I save it, it will now be part of the themes list. Another thing you can do in Scrivener is create project targets. So if you click on the Project Target button, you can click on Options and say you have a deadline of December 1st. Then if you hit OK, you can set how many words you want to get to by December 1st. Let's say 90,000 words. That's pretty quick to write a book in a couple months, but let's say that's what we're going to try to do. Now what will happen is Scrivener will create a session target for all the days you have left based on the number of days you write in the week. So let's say to get to that December 1st deadline, you write Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 6 days a week. It will reset the timer every day at 1 a.m. And if you hit OK, now Scrivener is telling you to hit that 90,000 word deadline for December 1st, you have to write 2,249 words each session. So it's a really great way to keep track of your word targets. Now let's look at a special project I created for the novel A Study in Scarlet, the first Sherlock Holmes novel. So if I go to the manuscript and I open these up, I took the first 4 scenes from the novel and I broke them up into 4 separate text documents. And this is how they look in Scrivener. And this is chapter 1, this is chapter 2, this is how it looks on the Corkboard. So you can see how it looks when it's totally written. I put in a synopsis for each one. I didn't put in any notes, but I could if I wanted to. Now, let's talk about the character folders and place folders in the binder. Here I populated them because what you can do, and this is great for any novel, but especially a mystery novel, is you want to have character template sheets for your characters. So for example, I created a character template sheet for Sherlock Holmes. Here you can fill in a name, you can put in his information, fill it out the way that you want, and you can even drop an image in the synopsis section of your template sheet. So you'll notice that I did that here. So let's say I click on Sherlock Holmes, I dragged and dropped the character photo of Basil Rathbone from my desktop, and now you can see Basil Rathbone as part of the character template for Sherlock Holmes. I can either see it in the Corkboard view or I can see it as a document. And then I can fill out all my information about Sherlock Holmes, and I did the same for Dr. Watson and Inspector Lestrade. Now let's talk about setting sketches. So I did a setting sketch for 221B Baker Street, and this is where you can fill out all of your information about your setting. So if you wanted to add a new character, you could say you want to do it from a character sketch or a new setting from a setting sketch. And the template sheet folder is where those blank character sketches and setting sketch templates live. And the beauty of Scrivener is all of these are customizable. You can create your own character sketch blanks or setting sketch blanks, and then once you have your blank template sheet, you can save it to the template sheets folder, and then you can use it just as you like throughout your book. Now these other folders are for documents related to your book. The notes folder is just what it says. You can create documents in there with specific notes. Same for the research folder. You can add research notes, research documents to your research folder. The sample output folder has examples of what your novel will look like based on the current template. Then there's your template sheets folder and your trash bin. Now let's say we want to do some editing in this book. We're working on scene number 1 where Watson first meets Stanford. You can have a split screen. This is the split screen button up here. I'm going to click that, and you'll notice it splits the screen into 2 separate parts. So let's say on the right hand side I want to have Dr. Watson's character sketch while I'm writing about Dr. Watson on the left hand side. So this is how your split screen will work. You can be working on one side while you're viewing the other. Now let's say you want to lock this in place, because if you keep clicking back and forth, sometimes you can put the wrong document where you don't want it. So to lock it in place, you go to Navigate, Editor, Lock in Place. So this won't move until you tell it to move. So I can change this scene, I can change this scene, but this Dr. Watson character sketch will stay here until I unlock it. You'll also see there's a little lock button up here. And if I go back up to Navigate, Editor, and unclick Lock in Place, it's no longer locked. And then you can go back to normal whenever you want by clicking the split screen button once again. Now remember when I mentioned the research folder before? Not only can you create text documents and add research information to those documents, but you can also drag and drop web pages, photos, and import files into the research folder. So for example, let's say for my A Study in Scarlet novel, I want information about Victorian England. If I open up my web browser to the page that I'm interested in, and I drag and drop the web address to the research folder, you'll notice that that becomes part of my Scrivener project. So it's now in my research folder, and I have access to it anytime I want. So now let's say I want a second web page about food in the Victorian era. So I open up my web browser, and I have a web page that I've picked out, and I go to the address bar, drag and drop the address to my research folder in Scrivener, and if you notice, now I have that web page as part of my Scrivener project. To bring in other types of files, if you right-click on the research folder, Click Add, Existing Files, files on your own computer, a web page where you would put in the address for the web page and the title. But you want to be cautious about that because anything that you drag and drop into your research folder, photographs, web pages, etc., will make your Scrivener project larger. Now think about our split screen. So now you can have research as part of your split screen while you're writing about the Victorian era. So if you notice, here's my research about the Victorian era on the right-hand side, and here's my text on the left. So now let's say I want to make some edits to this first scene, but I'm not sure if I want to keep them. That's where snapshots come in. So what I would do is I would go to the snapshot section. Over in the inspector, there's a little camera icon. It's right above the synopsis section. And I would click on the camera, and that's where your snapshots live. Now to take a snapshot, hit the plus button. Now this whole document is a snapshot, and I'm going to give it a name. Original Scene. And it has a date on it as well. Now let's say I make changes to the document. I want to get rid of the first 2 paragraphs. No, let's say I want to get rid of the first 3 paragraphs. And now that's my new scene. Then suppose I realize, oh my God, I really didn't want to do that. I really didn't want to rewrite that whole scene that way. I want to go back to the other one. Or better yet, let me compare first. So I hit the compare button, and then down here, it's going to show me exactly the changes I made and what's left. So if I want to go back to what I had before, I hit the rollback button. It's going to ask if I want to take another snapshot. I'm going to say yes. And then you see I have a second snapshot, which I'm going to call edited version. But you'll notice I'm back to the original version that I had before I made the changes. So snapshots can be very, very helpful. Now, one more thing before I'm done. Let me show you the name generator. If you go to Edit and Writing Tools, Scrivener has a name generator. You click on that, and this can really be kind of fun and get your creative juices flowing. So let's say you want to pick Finnish names. You want to see a list of Finnish names, male and female. And you want Scrivener to generate, oh, I don't know, 19 names, 20 names. You can attempt alliteration. You have all other kinds of choices here. Let's say I want male or female, either. I hit Generate Names, and Scrivener will generate 20 Finnish names for you. And it's a great jumping off point for you to start to create your own names, to think creatively about what names you want to have for your characters. So the name generator can be a lot of fun. And that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. I'll have part 2 next week.